All right, well, good afternoon. My name is Leola Carter, and I am your host for today's webinar. I am a SCORE mentor in the Minnesota division, where we have over 90 volunteers serving both Manatee and Sarasota County. I am also on the Education Committee and excited to bring to you today's presentation on finding, attracting, and retaining the right employees. I have two small businesses in Maine with about 100 employees, and my daughter has a small business as well with about 10 employees. So this webinar should cover the never-ending dinner topic of conversation about the right employee fit. And I look forward to Dane getting started in just a few minutes. But before we do that, I have just a little bit more about us here at SCORE. We are a nationwide nonprofit that is part of the Small Business Administration. What can SCORE do for you? We provide free mentoring services and educational services, such as this webinar, and we can help you in all stages of your business, right from that first initial thought all the way through when it is time to sell. To find us, you can visit score.org/Minnesota, where you can find all of these services. And today would not be possible if it weren't for our sponsors and community partners that you see listed here. And now it is time to introduce Dane DeSantis. Dane focuses his time on working with business owners to build value in their businesses before transitioning to new ownership. He prides himself on building relationships with people by caring, listening, and being honest. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing and then go ahead, Dane. And
Thank
just
you
while he
very
is
much.
getting, thanks, Dane. While he is getting set up there, if you do have any questions as Dane is going, if you can type those into the Q&A, and we will get those answered for you at the end. And if there's anything else you need to know, go ahead and type that into the chat box, and hopefully I can help you out as we go. All right.
All right, let's figure out how to this. This should work. Let's see what
Yep.
we're seeing. Okay,
Looking
cool. All
good.
right.
Perfect.
So thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you for everyone being here. This is something that's near and dear to my heart. One of the things that I hear that is most frustrating to business owners and business managers is finding and keeping the right people for my company. You know, Oftentimes we hear people will leave a job for another company, a competitor right down the road, just for a dollar more. And I'm going to tell you why that dollar more is what they probably got, but that's not the reason they actually left. So we'll talk about that. But before we jump into that specifically, I want to talk through a couple of things. I have three monitors and I'm trying to figure out, let's see, did that show you the next one? Okay, perfect. So let's talk about how we typically have seen what we've all seen out in our communities, some interesting and funny help wanted signs, right? This is probably not the way you want to be looking for your next great employee that's going to work with you or for you, right? So the first one is we're looking for some grape stompers, right? And they must have some good balance and some large feet. If you're skinny, you can't apply here. Okay. Next is toys. They're hiring low pay, bad hours, jerk boss. We're ready for you. Okay. Here's an interesting one. We're hiring. We're a restaurant. We're looking for servers, greeters, and line cooks. Servers serve people, greeters greet people, and line cooks, well, they cook people. Actually, no, they cook food. Uh, Next is we're desperate. We really need to hire somebody. We're hiring right now. Come apply. We really need you right now, right? This is one of my favorites. This gentleman is looking for someone to go back in time with him. This isn't a joke. We're in California. They're going to get paid after, and you must bring your own weapon. Safety is not guaranteed on this job. We've all seen funny things like this, and this is my absolute favorite. Goes without saying, this is Job Finders. We help you find quality people for your company, although we're looking for, right? These are the things that we see all the time, and these are oftentimes how people honestly look and how they try to hire people. So what I want to do today for you is I want to teach you um, how and what employees what it looks like, what it feels like for hiring people, what it means when you hire somebody who's not the right fit for your business, what that means for your business, how you're going to attract them, and how mostly, I think the most important thing is how you're going to actually keep them. So, one of my favorite sayings is by Benjamin Franklin: if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. Okay, so let's have a plan for attracting the right people, finding them, attracting them, and retaining them. So, let's talk about some statistics first, because replacing employees is kind of expensive. So here's the ugly, but there is some good to it as well. So the ugly is, and I'm not going to read this. Obviously, you can read my screen, but it costs a company about 6 to 9 months of someone's salary when you've got someone working for you and they quit. It's really hard to replace people. But one of the things that I really want you to take away from this when we're talking about employees is, and this is really hard for us to do as employers and or as people that are responsible for hiring people. We don't generally subscribe to this, but it's key. You have to hire slow and fire fast. It's really hard for us to do that. And the reason is there's I mean, there's not just one reason, there's a multitude of reasons. But a lot of it is, well, I don't have anybody to backfill. I've got more work than I can deal with. But one of the things that I want you to hear from this presentation is employees, especially your best employees, they are going to look at how you treat someone who's taking advantage of you, or let's call it your worst employee, and how you treat them will have an effect on how your best employee feels about your company. So let me explain what that means. If you've ever bought a bag of apples in the grocery store, no pun intended, Leola, that I didn't, we didn't rehearse that one. But if you go to the grocery store and you buy a bag of apples, when one apple goes bad, guess what it does? It spreads to the rest of the bag of apples. That is what we're talking about. When you've got an employee that is causing harm or being treated the same way as your best employee, that is going to spread to the rest of your employees. Okay, that was kind of a sidebar, but it was something that I thought was important for you to hear and understand. The average turnover rate in 2020 was 57.3 employees. Yes, we had COVID, but that's not very telling specifically to this statistic. The point is, we had a lot of turnover in 22, and we do have some turnover in 23 as well. The highest turnover rate at 33% is among first year employees. And why is that? Here's what I will tell you. One of the things that I see most often is that if you don't have your culture defined in your business, in your company, you're likely going to hire someone that is not going to fit the culture you've created or that has been created within your company. So if you don't know what your culture is, you probably have a culture that was created organically, and sometimes that culture that was created organically might not necessarily be the culture that is the best fit for you as the owner, for your management team, or for your employees, right? So I think it's beneficial and extremely important that you not only define your culture, but your culture, it permeates throughout your corporation, your business, your company, because all decisions can ultimately come back to your culture. So if someone is operating in a way that isn't the right fit for your business, for your company, You can go back to the culture, you can go back to your core values, and you can hold your employees, the people that work for you, accountable based on those core values and based on the culture of the business that you've created. Here's a daunting percentage or statistic. Only 32% of employees are actually satisfied with their work at their job. Look, we've heard it before that people go to work and it's their job. One of the things that I've created in my company, and I had a business coach who taught me this, and I was very fortunate to work with somebody who had built large corporations and really focused on culture of their company. Um, what he had told me, and what has really been a staple of my business, is you have to have people that feel honored to work for you. If they do, this is more than just a job to them. And we'll get into some of the reasons on what that looks like, what that feels like, and knowing if you're, working with someone who may not feel that way, or some of the things that you can do to get people, your employees, to feel that way. So let's talk about some of the good about employee replacement statistics. Companies with a good culture environment see a 72% decrease in employee attrition. So that's really important to understand, going back to the things that I talked about earlier and some of what the ugly is. If you get people to stay, it's going to save you money. You're not going through the headache of replacing people, training people. We really didn't even talk about that. Getting into the opportunity of training someone, how much is retained, and when they leave after 6 months or 8 months or a year, you got to start that process all over again, and you've lost time. And if you don't have good processes in place, there's an opportunity that you're gonna lose clients, you're going to lose other employees. I mean, there's a multitude of things that happen when that happens. 63% of the time, when someone leaves your company, you could have prevented it. That's a startling number that I saw when I was researching statistics as far as hiring, and more importantly, people who leave a company. We're going to get into what motivates people, and I think that will be a little eye-opening for the audience as well, because we have some common misconceptions of why people leave our business. Offering, and this one has been, I think, readily known, especially within the last 5 to 7 years. I would say, and listening to people who are in this space, the benefits thing is a really important thing. Obviously, as the larger you get, the more opportunity you have to offer benefits. And I think one of the things that's really important is differentiating yourself from those benefits and finding out what's important to the people that are working for you as far as benefits are concerned. I don't know that there's just a one size fits all necessarily. I mean, I know there's not a one size fits all. So um, the foundation and the theme of what you're going to hear me talk about most in this next 45 minutes or 40 minutes is communication. Communication is the key to 95% of everything we're talking about, and I explain this all the time. So what does communication actually mean? Obviously, it's getting information from one person to another in this case, but realistically, what we're talking about is setting and sticking to expectations. I think, from a managerial standpoint, from an ownership standpoint, from your employee standpoint, what happens is we have an expectation of what we are expecting from the people that work under us or work for us. This is what they expect, and something in the middle is what actually happens. That's where frustration, disappointment, anger, all of those kind of negative words come from, which realistically um, can be resolved, or can be worked on or worked through. We just don't do enough to communicate necessarily in an effective way, and that's a whole nother topic for another day. But communication is key to a lot of this. The other thing that I think a lot of people are most interested in, and we're seeing this more and more in the workplace, is that balance of personal life and work life. When someone has that, they're more likely to be happy, and when they're more likely to be happy, they're going to show up on time. They're going to be a better employee for you. So those are some of the things that I think are really important about workplace culture and how you operate your business. Okay, so let's talk about how we find employees, because that's something that comes up a lot. Look, there are your typical ways to find employees, and a lot of us on this Zoom right now have used one of these or all of these in order to find people. Let's talk about some unique ways to find employees, because that's really what you're here to understand. Is I know a lot of this. I've used these websites. So what can I be doing that might be a little unique, a little bit outside the box, thinking about how I can find employees. So I want to tell you a quick story. There was a gentleman that I worked with that had a landscaping company, had a large landscaping company. And we were working together. He had sold that landscaping company. We were working on he had started a moving company. And he was struggling to find good movers, because that's a strenuous job, right? You're picking up, it's a laborious job. You're picking up stuff, you're moving it, you're outside, you're inside. It's not the easiest job in the world. And I said to him, I asked him just a question. I said, where have you been looking for, your movers? Where do you generally find them? And he listed all the places that you just saw on that last slide. I said, all right, I want you to think outside the box a little bit. I said to him, think about an industry that is similar to yours, but isn't exactly, the same. Obviously, that's what similar means. But where could you find somebody that could fit what it is that you're trying to do, but think outside of the box and not go try to poach somebody from another moving company? So he sat and he thought. He really was racking his brain, and I knew the answer already, just because not that I was setting him up, but I had already thought about this. And we were going back and forth on some possible options. And I said, what about a personal trainer? Personal trainers are generally in shape. They have the ability to interact and communicate with people. They want to stay in shape. What does that look like for you? He's like, wow, I've never actually thought about that before. So we took it upon ourselves to start a campaign, essentially. And in 10 weeks, he hired 7 new movers, all personal trainers that, while they liked certain sides of the business, which was the working out and the helping people work out, and they worked in a gym and all that other stuff, essentially what we realized was, obviously, as a personal trainer, they wouldn't have to work out as much because they're lifting all day, but they could still do that stuff on the side if they wanted to, because they were really only working until about 3 or 4 o'clock. So if they wanted to take clients at night, they still could. So it really worked out, and it was a win-win for not only the employees but for the employer. So one of the things that I want you to think about is the example I gave you. That was just one thing that we can do, and we're going to get to a slide that talks about that. But let's talk about some other unique ways or places that you can find more employees. If you think about it, if you've got a current employee who's a good one, generally we attract like people. So if we usually hang out with people, or the old saying is, we are who we hang out with. So if you've got a really good employee, there's a good chance they've got friends or family members that could be similar to them. So it's a really good idea to ask your current employees, if you've got an open position, who might they know within what we call their sphere of influence, which is about 12 to 15 people around them, that they can call and say, hey, our company's currently hiring. They're hiring for this position. I know you have this sort of background. This might be a good fit for you. Networking events. You saw the statistics before. There are people who are unhappy in their jobs, and they don't necessarily have to be from your industry, as I started talking about earlier. You got to kind of think outside the box. Think about where potentially the next person who could be a really good fit for your business might be out there, and you might be, kind of interacting with them at these networking events that you're at anyway. Colleges and universities. I mean, there are plenty of people coming out of college that are looking for either internships or opportunities to get in the workforce. So I would get out there and do things like job fairs, where college kids are attending, looking for their next position. Your social network. Facebook has just given us an opportunity to spread our word or our thoughts and the things that we need out to a community of lots of people that we were probably never able to get to or as easily able to get to 15, 20 years ago. Professional organizations. There are a whole bunch of organizations that we belong to. Think about if we are selling someone else's products. There are vendors that we're working with that. I mean, it happened to me. Before I was in this position and I owned my own company, I worked for another company, and the company that I worked for, we sold our product to someone else, and that person that we sold our product to um, was looking for a position. It was an opportune time for me to move. And the great thing was I still worked with my old company and we had a great working relationship. So just because, someone is going to work for another company, especially if it's a vendor, that could actually be very beneficial for both companies. And in my situation, it was extremely beneficial for the company I went to go work for, as well the company that I left. There are a lot of nonprofits out there that have people, and for some reason, one reason or another, they want to get out of the nonprofit sector and get into the for-profit sector, and vice versa. Those are definitely some different places to look for somebody. I talked about vendors, your sphere of influence, your customers. You obviously don't want to go out and start poaching employees from your customers because they might stop buying from you, but there's always opportunity, and it goes back to communication. And in the situation again that I talked about earlier with my own situation, the two CEOs talked to one another and included me in the conversation, and we ended up seeing how that could be a very beneficial situation for all of us. Industry specific groups, especially when there's conferences. I had opportunities that I would go to a vendor conference, and there were people I was looking for, and we had the opportunity to interview and so on and so forth. Again, there are many opportunities for you to find people outside of the standard, right? You see Publix up here. If you're not talking to the person at the register about what you're looking for in your business when you're trying to hire somebody, you're missing out. They see hundreds of people a day. You have no idea the conversations that they're having. I've gotten many things from the people that I work with or talk to at Publix because you're just striking up conversations with people. And the reality is, people really do like to talk. Purchase a company with employees. I had an opportunity to work with a plumber who was looking for seasoned plumbers, and they acquired a company. They acquired 5 to 7 new employees with one acquisition. So that's a real thing, and it happens a lot. Make them come to you. What does that look like? What does that sound like? If you create an opportunity with a defined culture, and if you create a opportunity to have your business talked about in a wonderful light, people will search you out. Again, going back to that employee who feels honored to work with you, they're going to talk. They're going to want other people, to kind of grow this business along with you. So, keep doing well in your business and keep your employees happy, and that's one of the things that will definitely come. So the last one's kind of very global, but everywhere, anywhere and everywhere. And the more specific you can get, the better. We always think that we've got to cast this wide net of what we're looking for or who we're looking to talk to. But if you can get very specific about what you're looking for, there's this old saying that specific is terrific. I absolutely adhere to that saying. And if you look at this little, the little thing on the bottom where the asterisks are, some of you may know this, some of you may not. Not everybody is in Sarasota County, but understand. I just talked to an economist about this. In the state of Florida, there are 1,000 people a day moving to this state, and 300 of those 1,000 are moving to Sarasota County. Well, you say, well, Dane, what about the people that are moving out? No, that is the net. There's 1,000 people a day net moving to the state of Florida. So that's moving out minus or moving in minus moving out is still 1,300 are coming to Sarasota. So there are people, and if I can tell you one thing, and then you don't hear anything else about this, you got to differentiate yourself. How are you different than the other people that are in your industry that are looking for that same pool? If we are all fishing from that same pool, which was the slide before, the Indeeds, the Monsters, the Facebooks, and all that. And I'm not saying don't do that. That is necessary to do, but there are other options as well, and that's where I'm trying to get you. I'm trying to get you to be. And that's where this comes from. This is where this thinking differently comes from. If you want something you've never had, you must be willing to do something you've never done. Okay. So that's what we're talking about here. Anybody can sit up here and tell you, these are the places to look, but that's not what we're talking about in this presentation. So we talked a little bit about the mover, and that is in this next slide. But again, thinking differently, thinking outside the box. I want you to look at this picture. This is a person who's on a golf course, and he obviously has some relevance to grass and to water and to probably plants and so on and so forth. So you would think that he's a golf course superintendent. No, he's actually a landscape specialist, right? Again, an employee that we're looking for to find in a different but similar industry. This guy worked on a golf course, and he could go work for a large landscaping company. So I used this example before. This isn't a personal trainer in this case. This is a mover. This one's kind of cute, but also real world. Who is this? This is not a dog groomer, but this is a hairstylist. A little different, but still knows how to use the shears. Obviously, not somebody I go to, but nonetheless can be sent over to a different profession, industry. But I want you thinking a little bit outside the box. If you've got let's call it you work in a service industry, and your employees work inside and they're good with their hands, you might want to go to a company that all their employees work outside. Well, that could be a differentiator for them because they don't want to be working outside. They'd rather be inside, but they're still good working with their hands. So again, thinking differently is what's really important, and kind of what I'm trying to get you to understand. Okay. So we talked about this a little bit, but culture is like so important when it comes to business, and really your company. And I alluded to it earlier. If you don't know what your culture is, your culture absolutely has already been created for you, and you may have had a hand in it, you may not. So some of the things that you look at when we're talking about culture is these are some of the words that kind of come into play. Now, here's the thing about culture. Culture fits, right? And people fit into your culture. So here's the culture of my company. We are kind of an all for one. And what do I mean by that? Even as the owner of the company, if one of the people that works for me asks me to fill in for them, I will absolutely do that. And I don't expect anything in return. I know that they will be there for me. So that's part of the culture that I've created, is we just help each other, right? We want to walk with each other, and we want the opportunity to help each other out. So we have a culture of helping one another, right? And everybody knows that. So what is your culture? That's something for you to understand. That's something for you to decide. That's something for you to cultivate, because that's really, a culture can, change. It can, and it often does. One of the things that I've learned is, and I kind of learned this the hard way, and I have 6 people that work with me. I had 2 people that didn't fit my culture, but I didn't know that going in. And they only really lasted 6 months. And I realized after that I take full responsibility, because I was the one who was responsible for hiring them. But what I didn't realize was at the beginning that they didn't fit my culture. Some of the ways that you identify if the person you're interviewing or the person that is working with you, if they fit your cultures, you just ask. There are certain things that are non-starters. There are certain things that you can live with within your company. So you've got to ask those questions, right? So you will have people self-select themselves out. They will self-select out of your business because you're very upfront and honest with what your culture is and what is expected uh, from the people that work with you or for you. So, how do we attract employees? Because that's one of the things that I get asked a lot. So, we obviously talked about where to find them and unique ways of where to find them. Um, the thing that I think, struggle with the most is we create a job description that is generally very general. So I'm trying to hire an office manager. Well, here are the tasks. I'm going to go to Google and I'm going to type in office manager, and here are the job description. Here are the duties. Here are the responsibilities. Here are the minimum requirements. Well, how did you differentiate yourself from anything else that's out there? Number one. Number two, and what I think is really important is you want to create a job description for the person that you're looking for, as opposed to creating a job description or creating or finding the person for the job description. So let me tell you what I mean by that. If you want somebody who's very detail oriented, you have to use specific words that will attract someone who's very detail oriented. You can't just say, I'm looking for somebody who's detail oriented, because everybody says that, especially if it's in a industry, or I should say in a position that someone who is detail oriented is generally attracted to. That's just one example. So another example could be if you're hiring for a position that requires some leadership or some thought process or some outside the box thinking. There are specific adjectives, there are specific words that can be used when you're creating a job description that will attract a certain type of person. And there's different types of assessments that can be done to identify specifically a type of person within the assessment that could be ideal for the position. So there are things like the Enneagram, there's Clifton Strengths, there's DISC profiling. Those are three specific ones that I do work with and have worked with in the past to help you identify certain positions, certain people, for those positions, and ones, and they're obviously not a perfect science specifically, but you know what you're looking for when you have the opportunity to have people not only take those, but also a lot of people know those, what they are based on the assessments that they've taken in the past. And that's where it leads me right into Enneagram. Myers-Briggs is the other one, because understanding when you've got the right fit in a or once you've attracted you've found them and they're attracted to the position, you're again using those specific words to make sure that they know what they're looking for, you know what they're looking for in them, and realistically, again, with the goal of having the employees working for you and with you, feel honored to be part of this program and your business, your company. Again, using the right words, asking the right questions for the profile that you're looking for. I know this might be foreign to a lot of people, and if you've never heard this before, that is something that's like, well, what do you mean? But the reality is, certain words attract certain people, and we can get into that if you're interested. But yes, it's a very real thing, and something that I've had the pleasure and opportunity to help people with, because this is not an easy thing to understand. Um, and then we're also creating a position based on the different tasks, not the common one that fits for the generalization of that type of business. Again, this is something where I'm asking you to go out on a limb, think outside the box, and do something you've never done before. I've got a friend who subscribes to this theory and thought process, and as do I, which is if you continue to do the same thing over and over again, that is the definite and expect a different result. That is the definition of insanity. I know I'm guilty of that myself because that's comfortable. But again, you're here to learn something new, and that's what I'm hoping that you know you're hearing today. So I have a couple of different personality types, same position and different personality types. This is kind of an idea of what I'm talking about in words. So manager one, they like tradition, they believe in values and like honor, hard work, and social responsibility. They're typically reserved, quiet, and calm. They're known for being responsible and reliable. They thrive in an organization workplace, and they prefer rules laid out. And they like to use highly analytical and critical thought, who are highly detail oriented. So that's one manager. That's one type of job description that you would use to find this type of person. Um, the other manager is someone who's organized, dedicated, and honest. They believe in doing what's right and socially acceptable. They often take the role of a leader. As you can see, these are two different people, but they both could be very good managers. It's really important to know what you're looking for your business. They're methodical, organized, dedicated, reliable. They're dedicated and hardworking, guiding others, something that they feel strongly about. So if you use the same job description to hire these two people, you would probably get one or the other. You would not get both. So it's up to us as the one who is hiring to create a job description or to have a conversation with someone who is the person we're looking for, not the person necessarily that will fit a common theme job description. You hear me say the same things over and over again. They're that important, and they're that let's call it different. Not everybody, if everybody does everything the same way, again, we're fishing from that same pool or pond. We want to find ponds outside of our normal fishing area because we want an opportunity to hire something different. All right. So let's talk about how we retain them. So we found them. I've told you where to find them or how to find them or how to be a little bit different in finding them. I told you how to attract them because you're talking specifically to the person you're looking for or who's going to fit that job that you've created. Now we're going to tell you how do you retain them. Again, one of the things that is kind of difficult to do in some situations. You don't want a business of high turnover. There's a whole lot of reasons why you don't. We talked about it in the second slide. Not only is it resources, but it could be how you grow and how quickly you grow and how easy it is to grow and so on and so forth. So why should you care about employee retention? We want to save money by not having to recruit new employees over and over again. We will reduce productivity. We'll reduce productivity loss. We're going to increase productivity. That's why we want to retain our employees. It's going to reduce the amount of time and money spent on training. Training is expensive, and oftentimes we have to do multiple trainings a year. It's generally not just a one-time thing. One of the people that I work with up in Rhode Island, they do a training every other month on the same thing, and it's just a refresher, right? So they may have hired some new employees and they're doing that training every other month, and they bring some of their employees who've been there for a little while for refreshers. It's a really good way to keep people keep this stuff top of mind for them, and making sure that the processes are in place and things are being handled the way they should be. Eliminates the hassle of turnover recruiting, connects employees to your company, and builds loyalty. That's really important. Loyalty is a very important thing for maintaining a successful business. It increases customer satisfaction, improves that employer branding. These are just some of the things on why you should talk. Why employee retention should be important to you. So, what motivates employees, and why did we jump to motivation of employees? Because motivated employees are employees that stay with your company. So most people think it's money. It's that dollar an hour. In the service industry, you're going to go down the street for $1 an hour. The reality is, people are not in the workplace. People are generally not motivated by money. There are deeper things from a subconscious level that people are motivated by more than just money. So that goes back to the statistic that I talked about earlier, which is people who leave your company. I think it was 63% of people who leave your company, it could have been avoided. So again, it's not money. So what is it? So there was a study done by MIT that backs up the idea that people aren't motivated by money. And MIT is a college in Massachusetts, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. So they did it with college students, and it was proven that it was not money because they basically created a program whereby the better you did, the more money you made. And when it is a mechanical skill, um, like communication, mathematics, something physical, it did come out, which was yes, the better you did by doing something physical like shooting a basketball, yes, that was attributed to money. However, when it came to something like cognitive, like memory or logic or reasoning, like working, that was not money was not the motivator. So what? And then so then the question I get often is, well, that was with college students. MIT took this same exact study to rural India, where the average wage was like a couple of dollars a day. And they took this exact study and they made the highest level of accomplishment like a month's worth of earnings, and the result was exactly the same. So it's not just about college students, it's about human nature. It is who we are, that money is not the motivator. It's almost like for any of you, probably a lot of us are either in sales or have sold something. Anytime someone says to you, well, it was too expensive. No, that's not. People don't buy things based on price. They buy things based on the value they perceive from the price that it is. Same thing with motivation. It's not about the money. It's about these three things I'm about to tell you. So the first thing is competency. We define competency as the ability to do something successful or efficient. If someone doesn't feel competent in the work that they're doing, they will feel unmotivated to do their job. Okay. The next one, and this one is so important, autonomy. And I'm not talking about micromanaging. I'm not talking about that, but I'm going to give you an example of a company in Australia. They're a software company. What they do is once a quarter, they give their employees a 24-hour window to work on whatever they want and work with whomever they want. And at that 24-hour period, the only caveat is you have to deliver your work to the rest of the company, and we have a big party to celebrate, and it's this big whole thing that they do. And the funny thing is, because of the autonomy that they are given, this one day, these 4 days out of the year, result in software fixes that would have never happened, upgrades that they would have never done, new benefits and features that get into the software that no one would have ever thought of on their own. So, or I should say, when it's being directed, it was thought of on its own because they were given the autonomy to do these things that they really wanted to work on, but were never given the opportunity to do so. And then the last thing is relatedness. And what relatedness means is the state of fact or something being related or connected to. Like, there are in our area, there are a lot of veteran-owned businesses, and oftentimes veteran-owned businesses employ veterans. So there's a relatedness to the type of, not necessarily the type of business, but there might be a relatedness to the owner or to the other employees because their relatedness is what they've gone through. There's empathy, there's sympathy, right? There's a connection there, and that's the relatedness. So when you've got those three things, you will have very motivated employees. And when you've got motivated employees, you're going to have better customer satisfaction. You're going to have people that are going to stay with your company, and they will not just only look at the dollar that they think they can get on the other side of the street. So how do you figure all of this out? How do you identify? How do you figure out, well, are my people motivated? Are they happy at work? There's this thing called the employee net promoter score. And the employee net promoter score looks at things like identifying the happiness or the happiest and least happy employees. It also talks about things like employee engagement. How engaged are you as an employee to this company and with your customers and with your other the people that you work with, and so on and so forth. Identifies where you need to spend time nurturing your employees. Look, it's really hard. It's hard having, as Leola said, 100 employees or 10 employees. As owners, as managers, I think the people who work with us and for us they want us to know, or they want to know that we care about them. And what does that look like? What does that feel like? That's different to everybody. That, again, that goes into a very deeper subject that we don't have time for necessarily on this call. But the reality is, the more you are invested in the people that work with you and for you, the more likely you are to have them, be invested in your company.
And
This
Dane, real quick, could you say again what ENPS stands for? Just one more time.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Employee Net Promoter Score. So the Net Promoter Score, if everybody has seen it before, the Net Promoter Score is that question that we get asked after we have bought a product or used a service, which is, how likely are you to refer this to a friend or colleague? And it's 1 to 10. That is the Net Promoter Score. This brings it to another level, which is called the Employee Net Promoter Score, which dives much deeper into that one question, because that's a very high level psychological question. This gets much deeper into our employees, but it's built by the same guy, to be fair. Next is this Employee Net Promoter Score is extremely easy to use. There are websites where you can go. Just Google ENPS or Employee Net Promoter Score. There's websites you can use, and it's basically your employees fill it out. And it's things like, do you have a best friend at work? Do you know what your job? Do you know what you're responsible for at your job? And I think there's 11 questions, so it really doesn't take very long. And it's a 1 through 5 answering or grading scale. And at the end, you can identify, you as the employer or the manager will get a score for each one of your employees. So I think it's a 1 through 50, basically, because I think, let's all call it 10, and the highest score you can get is 50, or it might be 60, depending on what it is. But if you get somebody who's got an ENPS of score of 10, you've got a big problem. And you need to you have to go talk to that person and figure out what the problem is, so you can, work on it. Again, the results from this ENPS can be acted upon, because there's nothing worse, in my opinion, especially when having a long-time employee, losing someone who has all that intellectual property or intellectual knowledge of your business, and losing someone to another company or business that could have been avoided. Look, I'm all for having an employee better themselves, and there's obviously certain situations on why employees leave, and I don't mean that, but if there was something that could have been avoided and it wasn't because of improper communication or whatever the case may be, and you have the tools at your disposal to have avoided that, that's one of the things that I would say as an employer and as a manager that I want to be able to avoid, because it just comes really down to that communication, and really, honestly, the thing is, talk to them. They'll tell you, you got to create a safe place for it, but they will tell you what they want and need. And as long as they're a good fit for your culture and they're a good employee, I mean, we've got to differentiate ourselves from a company perspective and an employer perspective on some of these things. So I think this is the last, last slide, almost last slide. Here are the takeaways that I really want you to take away from this presentation. First of all, thank you for being here. You have to do things differently than you've done in the past if you want a different result. Create job descriptions based on the need of the job, not that typical job description. It's vitally, vitally important to find somebody new. Hire on attitude, not aptitude. This is a really good one. I can teach people how to do the things that they need to do in my business, I can't teach them how to communicate well with people. I can't teach them how to be a nice person. I can't teach them how to have a positive attitude. But I can teach them the things they need to know on how to do their job. So teaching someone or hiring based on someone's attitude, not what they know, it has been very valuable for me in the past. Find the person you want for the position by speaking directly to them, which is that job description that I talked about. Use the words that they would be attracted to, because that's really what we're looking to do. And really, if you don't know what your company culture is, there is already one. And there's plenty of resources out there to help you identify what your company culture is, and really how to push that out on a broader scale. And look, a lot of the times it is having conversations with the people around you, asking that question of what is your company culture, and again, oftentimes it's defined for you. Um, you can't motivate people. I didn't really talk about this much, but the reality is, I can't motivate you to do anything. I can only put the tools in place for you to motivate yourself. That's a really hard thing for us as business owners and managers to understand. We want to just, be that rah rah sometimes, but we don't know what's going on in people's lives. So if we give them the tools to be successful, and we give them the tools to have autonomy, to be competent, and to have some relatedness, whether that's what we do as a company or who we are as a manager. Those are the things that we're talking about, from having those tools to motivate the people that work for us, to be better. So the last thing I want you to think about is, are your employees happy? If you've not asked, you probably should do that. And I know there's plenty of resources at SCORE that can help with a lot of this stuff. So, I want to just thank you again for being here. And it is the afternoon, not the morning, but thank you so much for being here. I hope you learned something. This is something that's very near and dear to my heart. So, I definitely would open it up to questions if there are any.
Great. If anybody does have a question, if you could type that into the Q&A, probably down on the bottom of your screen, then Dane will get that answered for you. Just a couple comments while we're waiting to see if that happens. I absolutely loved the hire on attitude, not aptitude. Just reminded me of, and then also when you said, what's your company culture? So I was thinking about that, and you said if you don't have one, or one's already been created for you. I definitely didn't know 20 years ago what my company culture was. And like I said, I own supermarkets. So one of my friends came over to my house, and in the state of Maine, you're not allowed to self-serve tobacco. Like, you cannot reach over and get a pack of cigarettes. So one of my friends was shopping, and he reached behind the counter and grabbed a pack of cigarettes. Well, my cashier slapped his hand. And so I quickly learned what my company culture was, and that it's not okay to smack somebody on the hand. It was probably a light little tap, but at the same point, just absolutely reminded me of that whole crazy story. Do have some things, let's see, in the chat box. Nothing, doesn't really look like a question in there yet. And some, let's see. So I'm just going to throw up a few SCORE slides at the end if anybody does have anything. Oh, well, we do have a question in the chat box. How do you enforce values, culture, standards of a new hire within your company if they're hiring a 1099 contractor? That's a trick question.
That's a hard one. If so, I guess here's what I would say. It always starts from the beginning. If it's all about communication, you're setting expectations up front. If they're not being withheld, that's a boundary that's being stepped over. They've got to go. If you have to communicate it at the beginning, though, and I understand how difficult that can be sometimes, especially, I mean, if it's a new one, it has to be communication from the beginning. This is what is expected of you, and there's a process for us to remove. Yeah, I'm just talking out loud. You wouldn't say this necessarily, but you have to have a process in place that if your culture is not being followed, well, that might not be, even if it's a 1099, something that, you know, someone that you want to be associated with.
I think of that too, 1099. So my example on that one would be my snowplow guy. So he's driving around in the parking lot and obviously trying to keep the parking lot as clean as absolute possible for the customers pushing shopping carts. But at the same time, I did have a snowplow person who maybe was going a little too fast and, maybe not as courteous as they needed to be, by splashing snow around and stuff near the customers. And, right back down to that, like, can't have that. He's a 1099 contractor, but you've got, customer has got to be first, especially in the supermarket thing. You want to keep that nice and plowed and safe for the customer, but at the same time, you can't be flying by when somebody's got their, kids in the shopping cart and so on and so forth. So just another thought on that. Let's see. And I don't see anything else in Q&A. Somebody says, great presentation. Refresher to be mindful of how employees feel and treat others. Is there a way that this person can reach out to you, Dane?
Sure. Absolutely. Let's see. I can put my contact information in the chat box.
Okay, that would be great. I couldn't remember if I had it on my opening or closing slides. Gonna get to that part. And just to let all participants know that you will be receiving a copy of both the slides and this video presentation in your email, and that will happen in just a few days. Sometimes it happens today, but usually very shortly. And there is Dane's contact information in the chat box, both email and phone number. And I do have another question here. This person is new in the community. Is it okay to pass out business cards to the neighbors to recruit clients and employees? And the company is a small private caregiver.
Yeah. So here's what I would say. I am always out there talking about or looking for opportunities to get new clients and or bring on new employees. So yes, in my opinion, that's something that I would do. Yeah, for sure.
Great, thank you. And if we don't have anything else, I'd just like to thank everybody for attending our video presentation today. We will send you a survey so you can let us know what we can do to improve at SCORE or other topics that you may be interested in. So if we have nothing further, everybody have a great afternoon. And Dane, thank you so much. I think I took 4 or 5 pages of notes, so it was pretty good. I loved it. Have a great afternoon. We'll see ya. Bye-bye.